All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Liberalish podcast. This is episode 15. So, for our first time listeners, maybe some listeners that probably fell off and wanted to come back to us since our break, the Liberalish podcast, we are the political wing of the What You Expect network. So, we're here to talk about politics with like a little black edge to it. Um, Guys, I don't know about you guys, but I have been really excited to get back to this. A lot of stuff has happened, but before we get to it, let me just introduce the podcast. I'm your host, Keith. You got the lovely, the intelligent Carly over here.
Hey guys.
We have the mysterious but still intelligent Marcus over here.
I'm a little disappointed that I'm not the lovely one, but that's cool too.
I'm working on it. I'm working. This is a work in progress. This is a work in progress.
Mysterious is fine. I'll take that. Thanks, Keith.
All right, and then we have Kamala Harris's extended cousin from Jamaica, Ryan.
You know the vibe. I was speaking on behalf of the family.
We got to make sure everyone knows that she's Jamaican. At least
Period.
half of it. So,
The vibe.
all right, guys. So, first off, we took a little break. How was everyone's New Year's?
It was good. How was everybody else's?
It was good. It was good not having the pressure of trying to going out, so I could just stay in my house at like
True.
1 o'clock. Went to sleep,
Facts.
enjoyed my little freedom. My
Same.
job gave me those days off. I was just sleeping around with my dog. That's it. Like
Man, that's
that's
the
all
life.
We love to see it.
That's a life.
wholesome
That's
shit. You know the
absolutely.
vibe.
I don't know if I can go back to like a New Year's with like people again. I really enjoyed like just chilling, like buying my own alcohol and just chilling on my own dime. Like I don't know if I can go back to it anymore.
I will say this New Year's was like the New Year's that I've like dreamed of for years because I always hate the feeling like the pressure to go out. Like I
Mhm.
always want to stay in the house. So it was really nice to know that that was like what you should be doing anyways. I was comfortable. I was chilling. I stayed in the house, watched movies. I went to sleep at like I think 1:30. So it was great.
Fair enough. And like I think I developed a new New Year's tradition of just seeing how drunk Anderson Cooper can get on live television. So I don't know. That's been a pretty good tradition, and I might
Stick
keep
to
it
it.
going. Yeah, I might stick to it. All right. So let's talk about our podcast, right? So again, a lot of stuff has happened. I wanted to kick it off with some good news: the Georgia runoff election. Then talk about the Biden transition, and then we're going to talk about what happened on Capitol Hill. So a lot to cover here. So let's talk about the Georgia runoff election. So round of applause to the Democrats. Um, Round of applause to again black women, black people in general for just like showing up and voting.
Stacey Abrams.
Stacey Abrams, first black senator in Warnock to ever be elected from Georgia. So
I
special
just
shout
I,
out to him.
Shout out to him.
I just want to point out that Raphael Warnock made it like 40% of all male U.S. senators have been a member of Alpha Phi Alpha.
Oh,
We
nice. Shout
we
out
on
to,
we on a track.
Period.
and he's an HBSCU alumni
See,
too.
yep,
So
yep.
Yeah, Morehouse grad, right?
yeah,
Yes,
Morehouse
the
grad.
Morehouse man.
So
Shouts to
yeah,
them.
shout out to that. And
Uh,
Not Stacey Abrams, but Kamala Harris, also HBCU alumni as well.
us.
So yeah,
AKA.
HBCUs, they're bigging up right now.
Love to
Um,
see it.
and of course, shout out to Ossoff, John Ossoff, the first. I don't know if he's the first
Jewish.
Jewish senator from Georgia,
Yeah.
but again, like
Yeah.
the youngest senator in the House right now. Special shout out to him. It was a close
33 is
election.
crazy.
I just
33 is
wanna
crazy.
I just want to say I apologize for my comments before because I was not confident in Georgia at all. I was almost certain they were going to disappoint me. So I just want to say I'm very proud.
Mhm.
I'm very happy with the way and I just want to go to say like black people do vote. So I no longer want to hear the rhetoric that black people can stand in line for Jordans, but they can't stand in line to vote because that is just false.
Mhm.
And I'm happy with how it turned out. Hopefully some changes, some progress can come from this election and we can like move forward in a positive note.
No,
To
for
to
sure.
to piggyback off what Carly just said, like I think it's no pointing out that it was a battle of turnout, and Democrats were able to turn out more people than Republicans, and that's why we won. Like black people really showed up and showed out. Like even though I personally think that two criminals shouldn't be able to run for Senate. But it's the United States of America.
Yeah, we're gonna do a deep dive in the United States of America, I think, eventually, down the road. But yeah, no, I mean, as Carly said, like Democrats were like really showed out, but like Republicans did too. Like this shit was really close, like very very close.
I also want to say, and this is just a thought process that I had. I also feel like people are starting to, or at least in this year, considering the pandemic and how much people's lives have changed, I think people realize the importance of voting and actually voting for people that want to get things done that work in your best interest. That doesn't apply to everybody, but I think considering how devastating this pandemic has been to a lot of people, people realize what was at stake and realize, like, whether I have to vote by mail or I have to stand in line, like I have to vote because my voice has to matter, like something has to come. I just think previous years, people were kind of okay with like, it's whatever, it doesn't go my way anyway. The Electoral College is not gonna, they're gonna vote anyway, so what difference does it make? My little vote's not gonna matter. And I think people were just like, you know what, whether it matters or not, I gotta vote. At least that's how I saw it, and I think a lot of people saw it that way, that you could no longer be like complicit. You can no longer stand by and just wait for things to happen. You had to actually like be a part of something and actually put forth the effort to make a change. And I think that that's ultimately what happened.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more.
I think there's a kind of a novel thing, real quick. Just when you make it easier for people to vote, people are going to turn out, and I think you saw that on the Democratic side, and the Republican side too. I mean, they probably hit record levels of turnout as well. But I think another interesting thing to note too is that compared to November, Democrat turnout, I think, was held the same level, but Republican turnout fell off, and I think that's because a big part of that is because Donald Trump was not at the top of the ticket. So when you don't have Trump there, I think you're already seeing like what can happen. Besides the fact that they did run two terrible candidates, the Republican Party, two former criminals, as Brian said. So I think you're going to see what happens to the Republican Party when they don't have that celebrity figure for people to turn to. What is it going to look like? And if it's anything like what happened in Georgia, then maybe we're in good shape. We'll see.
Right.
So Marcus actually kind of brought up a good point, because I think last time I checked that Georgia is actually trying to roll back a lot of the electoral reforms that they made to make it easier to vote. They're trying to roll them back because, as you can see, this is what happens when you make it easier to vote.
Right.
Of course, yeah.
So let me just ask the podcast here a question, right? So, Democrats kind of won twice in Georgia. Is this a death to like the old white centrist Democrat theory in the South?
Nah, I don't think so, because I feel like we still got to keep the turnout at a very high level. Because so much was at stake during this election, it was easy to turn people out. But let's just say a random midterm, 2022, no president on the ticket, no Kamala on the ticket. If we make some gains in the South, then we can say that is like something that we're trending forward, But we still gotta. Kelly Loeffler still ran a dirty campaign and still got so much votes, like.
To go off Ryan, I just want to say also, I don't, because I also feel like this was kind of a special election. You saw how it was when Obama ran, like Black people are going to vote for Black people. Kamala's a Black woman. She was the first like Black woman to be, nominated for vice president. So that was one thing that a lot of people voted for. And plus we're in a pandemic. So a lot of people were voting for like some sort of relief. I just kind of feel like if those circumstances weren't present, it could have possibly went a different way. So I think just looking at the circumstances that were, there during this election kind of like pushed it forward in the way that we wanted it to go. But we also have to keep the momentum going for further elections so that people still realize the importance of voting and listening to listening to the candidates and what the candidates are offering you versus like what you personally are looking for, and then voting for what works in your best interest.
No, agreed for that. So let's talk about like what this means for us. So this means we own both houses now, both the Senate and the House of Representatives. It doesn't mean that we're going to get a lot of progressive things passed. For instance, Joe Manchin
Most powerful man in the U.S.
Most powerful man in the U.S. Joe Manchin, senator out of West Virginia. He is a definition of a centrist, probably more so right than anything.
52% he voted 52% with Republicans, so he's a Republican in my eyes.
Ryan, he's a Republican in my eyes too. Like he kind of already slipped up already as being the most powerful person in America. Like he came out and said that he was against the $2,000 checks. When he saw that the stock market took a little dip because of that, he had his aides walk it back. I'm just kind of like confused as to why he thought that was a good idea to say that, because again, Joe Biden kind of campaigned on that. Both the senators out of Georgia campaigned on that. Every Democrat campaigned on you're going to get your checks if we win Georgia.
Even the two Republicans in Georgia campaigned on that. Like there's people in the Republican caucus. That's just show you right wing Joe Manchin is. Like, and I can't fathom why he's like that, because he lives in the third most poorest state in the union. Your net worth is nearly $5 million. So you're telling me that people who are most likely in your district, in your state, is suffering so much, and then you're gonna vote against it? Like, I don't get it. I feel like the $2,000 checks will eventually go, because it has Republican support, especially the Republicans who want to run for president in 2024. They all are gonna jump on it. But this just shows you that Joe Manchin is basically about to become Joe Lieberman.
Yes.
Well, I don't know about that. I think the reason that he gave was the one, and I think it is a fair criticism of the $2,000 checks thing, is that they don't want to give $2,000 checks to everybody at a time when, the fact that it's going to people, they want to kind of focus on the people that are most hurt by it, and those are people that are making far less than I think the $75,000 threshold that they've kind of set up. They want to make sure that the people that absolutely are like destitute are the ones that are getting the money. Was the first thing that I think mentioned, and I think people that kind of hold his view have been saying. And then on top of that, I think the other thing that's, I think most important is his mind, because the question was, what's the first thing that you think Joe Biden should do? And he just said it wasn't $2,000 checks. I think that he's more focused on getting the distribution of the vaccine out. And we're right now very, very behind schedule in terms of making sure that the vaccine is rolled out the way that it needs to be to all the states and all the people that are going to need it. And that's across the country. So I think that's, I don't think he was, I read the quotes too, and at first I thought, out of context, it looks like he's saying, no, we don't want $2,000 checks, but I think he says that it should not be the priority for the United States. And I'm kind of open to that. I do think, you can do both. You can, you can chew gum and walk at the same time here. But for all intents and purposes, like this is, I totally get wanting to focus on making sure the vaccine is rolled out to everybody, so we can get to, closer to that 70 to 80% of coverage that we would need to get back to some semblance of normal. Especially because
we're behind.
So far behind.
Yeah, like we're super behind when you look across to other major global. I don't know what the fuck I'm trying to say. You get what I'm trying to say. But
other countries.
Yeah, like the big countries. And it's like I was just saying the other day, like the rate at which we're going and handing out vaccines, I actually don't even know like when a realistic time for the 80% that we're looking for will happen, because it's just going so slow. So I can understand the desire, because as I previously mentioned in other episodes, it's like we're almost learning how to live with COVID rather than getting past it. And I feel like maybe a lot of the issues that are being talked about, or a lot of things that people are looking for out of politics, could be solved with getting this vaccine out. Like maybe we can return to some level of normalcy if we get these vaccines out. So I can understand that being a priority over the 2,000 checks. Like Marcus said, I believe that you can do both. But if you have to prioritize it, I think the health of the people is equally as important than the like giving people the relief that they're looking for.
Just to put the rate we're at, I think what I read was that if we continue at the rate we're going with vaccinations, we won't get to that 70-80% number until 2023.
That's ridiculous.
So I totally get prioritizing the rolling that out, so that, because 2 years, again, if you're looking at it from a legislative perspective, you don't want to spend 2 years working on COVID stuff. All right. And I think that you can kind of get over the COVID stuff if you can get a fast rollout of the vaccination. So I can totally understand wanting to prioritize that over 2,000 checks, although I think it's a false choice having to choose between the two.
And that's what I'm saying. I feel like what Joe mentioned, basically, choosing, like, there's the government bureaucracy is so large. You don't need to like be focused on one single issue, you know.
Exactly.
I feel like, again,
No.
it's a false choice because the
Mhm.
economy is still emerging jobs. Like, there was no, according to the jobs report, there was barely any job gains, and we lost more jobs than we gained. We lost
Lost
upwards of like
160,000, I think.
and most of those, and like a super majority of those were women, and most of those were women of
Black
color.
and Latino
Like,
women, yes.
yep, we need. It's not like we can prioritize the COVID vaccine, but these texts are literally, this legislation gonna take a couple of days to pass. You know,
Yeah.
like just brushing it aside and say, oh, I want to focus on blah blah blah, doesn't work. It can't work.
So I kind of wish that we had like someone who's like, you know, in the literally like in Capitol Hall, like as an aide or something, to explain the process to us. Because my understanding of how this works is that in order to roll out the vaccines, Congress needs to pass like a massive spending bill in order to fund the rollout of like this new vaccination scheme that Joe Biden wants to run. We can attach $2,000 checks to that and use the reconciliation to avoid the filibuster.
Right.
Get the 50 senators, get Vice President Harris to vote on it, and then we're good. We get our cake and we can eat it too, and we can do both at the same time.
Absolutely.
That's kind of where I was confused of why Joe Manchin is saying, you know, I think we should prioritize one or the other. And it's like, well, we
Because he's a
don't
Republican.
have to. You know what I mean? If we're all equal on the same page, we can get our cake and eat it too. You know?
I think it also goes back to like, you know, kind of like my running theme that they're coming from a place of privilege. And I always say that it's important in any situation to recognize your privilege, even like everyday people who are saying like, oh, you know, the 2000, or even people who are complaining about unemployment. Maybe you don't need the 2000. Maybe you are in a position where like you can continue to afford the things that you needed to, like your life probably hasn't financially been burdened by the pandemic, and that's fine. But I think it's kind of like, you know, kind of like not okay to say to people like, oh, we don't need to worry about the $2,000, because no, you don't need to worry about the $2,000. Like, this is, you know, it may not seem like a lot because it's not, compared to like, again, what other countries are doing for their citizens and have been doing for their citizens during this whole time. But to some people, that's rent. Like, to some people, that's putting food on your table. That's like making sure your kids are okay. That's making sure that your head is staying above water. So it's also like on brand for them to say like, okay, we should be focused on this other thing and not the $2,000 check, because you don't need the $2,000 check. So obviously, like, to you, it's not important because it doesn't really affect you anyway. So I do think that it doesn't need to be one or the other. It needs to be both, because both are going to help, you know, the working class people, the everyday people, like just the country as a whole. Because if we want to get back to normal, or if we want to get back to life, you know, before COVID, or something similar to life before COVID, it has to be both, because people need money and people need to be vaccinated so that we can move on.
So let's move on actually as a group, and let's talk about the de facto leader of the Democratic Party, and that is Mr. Joe Biden. Let's talk about his transition team now. So he did come on and make a couple of big announcements, and I just want to highlight for the record, for the podcast, I want producer to put this in our podcast records, that Marcus was wrong in his prediction on Attorney General.
And Ryan was right at that point. Ryan was right.
And Ryan was right. You know, you hate to see it, but basically Biden kind of waited till after the Georgia Senate races to nominate our good old friend Merrick Garland to be the Attorney General. It's kind of an unusual pick because Merrick Garland is a judge, not like a really prosecutor, but it kind of shows that Joe Biden is going for a more centrist viewpoint, and he also wants to be extremely hands-off with the Department of Justice. So, you know, hey, good for Merrick Garland, and I think he made a couple of good picks too. He's going to run the Civil Rights divisions as well. So we'll see how that goes for us.
Yeah, I think Merrick Garland was a safe. The reason why I thought it was going to be Merrick Garland, it's the safest pick. Like if you read most of Merrick Garland's court decisions, they're like in the middle sometimes. He leans kind of conservative on some of his decisions, and so it's easier to get past the Senate. You probably feel like they owe him for what happened with the Supreme Court job. So I think it was just a safe pick. Like,
I'm actually curious
I think
who's
too,
going to be Guy Marcus.
No, I was gonna say I think too. Like, if you've listened to like the rhetoric from Biden, like he does want some buy-in from Republicans, and I think it's a lot easier if you have someone who's kind of this centrist figure, for better or worse. He does want some buy-in from them, and I think you have a centrist guy like Merrick Garland, who was, if you even go back to when he was nominated for the Supreme Court, one of the ideas was that he's someone that even Republicans could support. Votes. I think it's kind of the same thing where it's like during the confirmation hearings, although they don't need a vote from the Republicans, like it would be nice if someone sensible, like I can't believe I'm saying this, Mitt Romney, was like, you know what, Merrick Garland's an okay guy. I have no problem putting confirming him for the post. I think that's kind of what Biden was going for versus someone like I don't know what would go against Doug Jones other than he was just a senator, or even I'm blanking on their name, but Sally Yates, was another someone else who was also considered for the role apparently, but. I think Garland just kind of ticks that box for them. And another thing on Garland, I think that might make him an interesting choice, given what just happened this past week, is that he does have some history in dealing with domestic terrorism, as he was involved with the case with the Oklahoma City bombing. And I think that's kind of one of the bigger challenges we're going to have for the next, certainly for the near future. I think having an attorney general with some experience dealing with those, with that sect of American life is going to be very vital going forward. So I think from that point of view, I'm disappointed to be wrong. I'm totally fine. It won't be the last time. So I'm totally fine with Merrick Garland getting the pick, even if he is a little more centrist than I would like.
I also feel like, when it comes to Biden's transition team, another thing is, even if you have criticisms about whoever he picks, which is, valid. I never want to take away from anybody's criticisms. If you feel one way or another, that's okay. Is that, what is your alternative? You have to give them a chance to, and even me, with Kamala, I've had criticisms about her. I've had criticisms about Joe Biden, and just, I think when it comes to politics, you can always pull things from people's past that is like, oh, I didn't like this about them or something that they did. But considering everything that's going on and considering the last 4 years and how traumatizing and how divisive and how toxic it's been, I feel like it's refreshing to just give someone a chance to do something different than what we've been seeing. So regardless of like Marcus said, I didn't think that they were going to go with him only because of, the fact that he was a judge and he already was holding a position anyway. But I'm curious to see what he does. I'm curious to see if things change the way that I'm asking them to change or things that I'm hoping to change. So I'm willing, and I hope that everyone will just give these new people an opportunity to kind of just forge a new path. And if they choose to do things that kind of are like, oh, I don't like that, then you can criticize them, but at least give them a chance.
Yeah.
I don't know if I said it on here, but I don't view the Biden administration as some stalwart of change. I really view them as a transitional administration, trying to get back things to the old way before Trump, and then we can move forward, because I don't expect Joe Biden to come in with sweeping change
or new normal,
anything like that.
Or new normal. Yeah. It's a new normal, and that's something. And again, it's going back to the theme of people not really understanding politics or just how things work. Every transition team there's going to be people who are so comfortable with the administration that's in place that it's they're just not even open to a new administration. And then you have people who are so over, and I'm sure a lot of people are over the administration that we have now, because I am, that it's even if, I ain't got no choice. I gotta just see what's gonna happen and give them a chance, because I'm just so over it. I'm ready for it to just go.
Yeah, no, I mean, fair enough. Look, Joe Biden never really ran as progressive. He ran as a centrist. To Ryan's point, he did say when he was campaigning that he was going to be a transition president. So for the progressive point of view, you're going to get very small victories. we're not going to get like, huge victories from this guy. Like he's probably going to listen to us, but like we're going to get very small victories out of a Joe Biden administration. And that's the way it's going to be. I mean, like he's a centrist Democrat. He's been like that way his entire career. And so like picking Merrick Garland, a fellow centrist, this makes the perfect sense. He's trying to restore back like normalcy in the Department of Justice, which is pretty much was used as like Trump's personal lawyer or law firm when he was in office. So he's just trying to bring it back to, I guess, the way things were before Trump came about, which I can't be mad at that, to be honest.
I mean, given the way that Trump's kind of dragged us, I think that going back to some semblance of normal, even if that normal wasn't, great, that is a win. That is a major victory to being able to say, go back. Like if we could rewind the clock 4 years and be like, okay, we're just going to continue on what Obama was doing, you would definitely take that over, what's what we wound up having, the last 4 years coming into this week. So that's a major victory for sure. It shouldn't be understated at all.
No, for sure. So let's move on to the rest of like Biden's picks. So Biden did seriously consider Senator Bernie Sanders out of Vermont to be his labor secretary. The senator made it pretty publicly known that he wanted to be the labor secretary, but as you can see, we barely got the 50 Senate seats needed to hold a majority, and then taking Bernie away from that is just going to jeopardize that majority for us. So Biden did lay that out in his speech. He did say, hey, I seriously consider this guy.
He did.
But here's a really logical reason why I didn't pick him, which makes sense. He said that he's better off in the Senate. I agree with that.
Yeah.
So,
and that just goes, that just like, again, that goes like kind of like what I was saying about Merrick Garland. Like he was already just somewhere, and to like take him from where he was could just, it could have been like, it could have gone another way. I mean, ultimately, I guess he decided that was okay. But considering how important it was for like the Georgia runoff, and just how important it is for us to like have the control that we have, the Democrats have the control that I think it was a smart decision. I think it was a logical decision. Again, you have people who I pride myself on being a logical thinker. So when people like apply logic to situations, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. I can understand where you're coming from. You have people that are not going to be happy with that because they're like, oh, well, what about Bernie? Like Bernie was so great, and Bernie is great. I love Bernie, but I think it's okay to leave Bernie where he is.
Yeah, I agree. And like, I think Bernie is like a great voice, at least for like the progressive movement, I think having him in the Senate,
especially considering how old he is, like it's actually it's interesting how progressive he is considering how old he is, because, most people his age are very like conservative and have outdated views. So I think it's really refreshing to have Bernie where he is and for him to stay put. I'm okay with that.
If Bernie, I have a wild theory. But if Bernie plays his card right, he could be one of the most powerful person in Congress, because the squad grew from him. Like they really they took their whole blueprint from Bernie Sanders. Like Bernie Sanders created the whole squad himself. And if the squad plays their cards right, they could be a controlling faction in the Democratic controlled Congress, and Bernie Sanders could be that representation in the Senate, of the squad. So,
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. If the squad or the Justice Democrats, either or, can gain enough, not even take over the entire House, but kind of how what the Tea Party did to Republicans back when Obama was
Freedom
president.
Caucus.
You're right, the Freedom Caucus. If they get a large enough following where they can like dictate who's the speaker, I think that'll be good enough. We'll see like a lot of like progress and change from that.
And that's why I've been like trumpeting the same thing. Like Nancy Pelosi and the establishment Democrats better be careful of what they're doing, because if they don't, they should take what happened to John Boehner and Paul Ryan that got forced out by the Freedom Caucus. The Freedom Caucus literally bullied Paul Ryan. They bullied John Boehner. They bullied those two speakers so crazy when they got enough power, because they were being ignored. Essentially, the Freedom Caucus has been there for a minute, but they was ignored until they got their numbers. It's like 50. So if you need anything to pass, you need them.
But one thing to kind of like highlight the difference between like the Freedom Caucus and like the Progressive Movement or the Squad, if you will. The Freedom Caucus got a lot of dark money, especially from like I think it's the Koch brothers.
Koch brothers, yeah.
Koch brothers, thank you.
Koch boys.
Koch boys. Not talking about Young Jeezy. But yeah, so basically like they got a lot of money from those brothers, basically, and that kind of funded their movement, which is why we saw such like a rapid progression from the grassroots to in the House to pretty much the presidency, if you will. So
it wasn't just that; they were also bankrolled by, they were intellectually bankrolled by the Heritage Foundation and a number of other like right-wing think tanks that were able to kind of furnish them not just with candidates, but with an ideology that they can then turn around and sell, to their constituents. And there's nothing, as much as Bernie Sanders' movement is popular, it is as big as it was. It doesn't seem like it's something that they can grow nationally to the point where they're winning House seats.
I think they can actually. I think that's where I have to disagree.
We would have seen that this year. Like they would have made gains, I think, in the House, whereas they kind of lost them in the House.
Well,
based on
actually, the squad grew this year.
Yeah,
the squad grew this year. The DNC lost, not the squad. So So for me, I feel like if they have a good ground game, like they could pose a threat to Nancy Pelosi, like because the squad really dislikes her. Just saying.
You can see an argument for both between like Ryan and Marcus, right? Because the squad did grow, and you're more so like your centrist Democrats did lose seats, especially like in Florida. Now, like if you talk to a lot of centrist Democrats, they're blaming members of the squad. Now, do we have any data to show that they have the right to do that? I don't think we do.
I think that went out the window with the Georgia Senate race. Like,
yeah, that's fair.
Warnock and Ossoff weren't campaigning as centrists; they were campaigning as liberals. Dyed in the wool liberals, and they won. Now you can point to that for a lot of reasons, but it certainly wasn't because they were people balked at them selling socialism or anything or Medicare for all.
Right.
I think yeah. So when they first originally blamed the squad for that, they had a conversation with AOC. And AOC was basically telling us, exposing the old Democratic strategy. It was like they wasn't paying for ads on social media. They was only going for it like the regular way. Like one candidate only paid like $10,000 an ad and then just try to do traditional campaigning. When traditional campaigning is out the window, and Republicans know that, Democrats don't know that. That's why when you go on Facebook is like the popular platform for Republicans because they pay for ads. They kill you with their surrogates. They do all of that on Facebook. The Democrats didn't do none of that. And AOC pointed that out. And I think the argument just started dying. And I think the death nail to that argument was when two liberal senators got elected, and Warnock and Ossoff.
That's fair. And like to Marcus's point, they weren't centrist. So I do want to go down the list of like who Biden announced is going to be sitting in his cabinet. So we talked about the labor secretary position. Boston Mayor Marty Walsh is going to be the next labor secretary. He advocated for a $15 minimum wage and paid family leave when he was mayor. Secretary of Commerce is going to be the Rhode Island governor, Gina Raimondo. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
That's correct.
Thank you, sir. She was also strongly considered to be the VP and also the health secretary, but she pulled her name out of the health secretary position because Rhode Island's cases were going up. So she is going to be our commerce secretary now. Shout out to her. Deputy Secretary of Commerce is going to be Don Graves. He's a longtime advisor to Joe Biden. And then the Small Business Administration is going to be Isabel Guzman. She held pretty much a similar position in California. And she served also as a senior advisor and deputy chief of staff for the SBA during the Obama-Biden years as well. So shout out to those people. I think that's it for the cabinet positions. He might name a few more like smaller roles here and there, but I think that's it for any major cabinet news. All right, so let's talk about what happened on Capitol Hill. I've been waiting for this for a while now. All right. So let's talk about the boring congressional procedure first, right? So how did this all start, right? So Congress has a ceremonial role to certify the election. It's like the Queen of England or your Governor General appointing the Prime Minister. It's just ceremony.
Giving consent to form a government.
Right, exactly. That's exactly what it is, Ryan. Thank you. And like, so Congress is going through the process. It's a joint session of Congress. The vice president's there. The Speaker of the House is there. All the senators, except for Senator Grassley, who's recovering from COVID, is there. I think all the members of the House is there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going through the process, and they have the right to. They're going through the process, and they have the right to challenge the electoral results of a particular state because they're counting the electoral votes, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a stupid process because, again, you had the time to challenge it since November. They did. It's been certified into federal courts multiple times, but again, ceremonial process, right? So as we're going through it, Arizona, they go alphabetical order to the states. Arizona came up. That gets challenged by the House. You need a senator to sign off on it. Ted Cruz is that senator. And these guys decide to go to their separate houses to debate it. I never watched this process before. I don't know if you guys watched it.
This seemed like a C-SPAN content.
It was boring as hell. I'm never going to do this again.
It's very uneventful. It's very uneventful. But I think considering what was going on, it made it more eventful than usual. Usually it's not this eventful. It's not that.
No.
It's very boring. Yeah.
It's like a quick process. Like you go through all 50 states.
Absolutely.
Honestly, I felt bad for Pence, which I hate saying that because you're saying the same thing over and over and over again, 50 times. And then
that took like several election classes, never knew that this was part of the process.
Yeah.
So I was very confused. Like what was happening? Like why is this needed?
It's a civics thing. Like I learned about it in civics, but again, like I said, it's usually not this much of a crazy process. It's usually like a one and done type thing. It's like, okay, cool. But I think considering the such speculation challenges surrounding this particular election made it way more catastrophic and eventful than it usually is.
Yeah, it's only supposed to be 35 minutes.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's usually real quick.
It's usually real quick. And like to put this in context, right? So when the members of the House and the Senate are challenging the results of the state, they're basically saying that Congress has the right to overturn the results of that state. So they're pretty much like null and voting democracy in a way, right? And like Congress is selecting the president. That's essentially what their argument was. It's like we couldn't trust the results from the state, therefore it's upon Congress to pick the next president of the United States.
My thing is, you can go ahead.
No, go ahead.
My thing is like that very idea within itself is so unconstitutional, and Congress and the Senate and the House is made up of so much constitutional lawyers that know basic constitutional rights that they know whatever they was trying to do was unconstitutional. Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz, the two people that were the bannerman of this old idea, are all constitutional scholars, Mm-hmm. Like, so this is nuts to me that they could this idea even occurred to them, because the Constitution gives the right to conduct election and do all of that stuff to the states. Like the federal government has no parts in that. Like has no power over elections. Our elections are conducted. Hence why Jim Crow happened.
Right. And Ryan, like, so we're from the island, so we understand like how the governor general picks the prime minister. Mm-hmm. As you said, like you're giving consent to form a government, right? And like I'm trying to like think like on the U.S. context. Like I know like back then for us, like the Queen had legitimate power, and so she actually picked the prime minister. And when she lost that power, they just kept that tradition up. And I'm like, for Congress here, is the whole reason why we do this is because like back then they're just like making sure not enough Black people voted, because that seems like that's like kind of like the context is for them challenging the election, right? They're challenging the election in like Georgia, for example, because they're saying too many Black people voted.
That's exactly what they're saying.
That's basically what it is.
That's exactly. No. Let's make this very clear. That's exactly what they're saying. Like the voter turnout for African Americans was just like so astronomical. It was like so like large that it was almost like we've seen this since election day, you know, when we were talking about Michigan and we were talking about Pennsylvania and Georgia. We weren't talking about Michigan. We were talking about Detroit. We weren't talking about Pennsylvania. We were talking about Philadelphia. We weren't talking about Georgia. We were talking about Atlanta. These are historically large. These are cities that have historically large African American populations, and so that was really the basis. This all goes back to the Southern strategy, where you use these dog whistle terms, these code words to basically refer to Black people and racism. That's really what it is. And I think a lot of people have become very naive when it comes to that, but that's really what this is about. It's just simply like you feel threatened by the presence of Black people. It really just, again, what do I always say? Racism. Like racism is going to always show up. Like it's our good old friend racism is usually the reason for a lot of things. And I believe strongly that is what it is. Like it was just, wait, hold on. Where did all these Black people come from?
That's exactly
you can't say like, oh, it's too many Black people voting. So what is your go-to? Oh, okay, let me think of another way to flip what I'm trying to say so that it's more of a legality thing. It's more of a constitutional thing. It's more of a state, you know, political thing, but it's just Black people. That's what it is. And I think I want people to understand that what this is all about. It's just, they don't feel like we should have a right to, they don't, like, it's outdated, but they don't feel like we should have a say in what goes on in this country. But that's what it is.
That's exactly what it is. And then like to continue what's been going on here. So like in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, surprisingly, he was against all this. He was saying like, look, guys, like, please don't do this. Again, he did attack the voting process, and he attacked like the how it's easier to vote now. He attacked that. So I'm not giving him too much credit, but he did say like, please do not do this. This is going to be a stand in our democracy. Democrats echoed this. And as like Ted Cruz was speaking, that's when it all happened. And I was pissed off because I was like, this shit is boring. And I went to go get a glass of water, and I came back and the Save America rally was going on. And so basically what that was is like the Save America rally was a bunch of Trump supporters. They came to the Capitol. They all organized this online. Like this was all online, right? So
paid for by a wife of the only Black Supreme Court justice currently.
Shouts to Jenny Thomas. No shouts to
Jenny Thomas.
Jenny Thomas is her name. Yeah. No shouts to her, but yeah.
What does that say about Clarence
paid
Thomas,
for all of these buses?
Sidebar. What does that say about Clarence Thomas though?
It says, honestly, can I say, it says exactly it. If you know Clarence Thomas, it says exactly who Clarence Thomas is. Yeah. It's not surprising at all. And that's what I say, you know, all skin folk are not kinfolk. Just because someone is Black does not mean that they are pro-Black. And Clarence Thomas, this is on brand for Clarence Thomas. I'm not surprised at all. It's disappointing. It's upsetting, but it's on brand. I can't even say it's not.
Insert Dr. Umar right now.
He's basically Uncle Ruckus. Like
exactly.
He's very much Uncle Ruckus in this situation.
Always has been. And I employ people to do their research. We're always rooting, and I'm speaking from a Black woman's perspective. We're always rooting for like Black men and just Black people in general. But some Black people are so, it's like worse. Like it's worse when you do this to your own people versus when the other side does it. And I just feel like like so disgusted with Clarence Thomas. I always have been, like ever since his whole confirmation hearing, like he's just always like made my stomach hurt. But it's upsetting that a Black man had played a part in this. Whether you know him or not, at the end of the day, you're still a Black man. Right, and the fact that you even had a role in this is very disappointing.
So this is
I would say that this has been planned for a long time.
Absolutely.
If we harken back to the first debate, Trump told the Proud Boys who organized this thing to stand back and stand by. And that
what did they do?
The rally,
they did exactly that.
March. He basically activated a reservist army, the Trump army, as the letters were saying. You know,
I think you're giving Trump a little too much credit there. All right, I think Trump just. And then there are just idiots out there who are like, you know what, man, he's right. Let's go do this. Let's go. You know, we should be standing down and standing by. I think people kind of just took his words and ran with it, but I honestly don't think Trump really cares. I mean, if you listen to his comments after the fact, he called the whole thing lowbrow, which, you know, goes to tell you what he really thinks about his supporters. But yeah, I don't think he really had any real rolling it. He just kind of, I think people just kind of heard his words and ran with it to a very dark place.
No,
But
I feel like
I also feel like
Parler.
But I also but I also feel like Trump supporters, and I've said this, have become almost like a cult following, where Trump they don't have to tell, he doesn't have to tell them anything. They're just so blindly loyal to this man that they will do anything and say anything for him, whether he wants it or not. Like, Trump is gonna leave office and go about his, like, things are, whatever's gonna happen. Like, let's say he goes and he just returns back to like whatever he was doing before this. They're still going to hold on to like this like allegiance to Trump, whether he's in office or not, because that's just, they have picked him as their new like supreme leader, whether he asks for it or not. So I agree with Marcus in the sense that like he didn't have anything to do with this, because whether he said something or not, they were going to do this anyway. Like, this is just like poor, ignorant, stupid people who just had nothing else to do, and they're just like so pissed about this election that they feel like, because it's white entitlement.
It is.
You know, for years they've been able to just cry about things and riot and complain and just bitch about shit, and then, you know, they get their way, and it's really eating at them, that no matter how much that they do, it's, you know, like, again, like they reconvened at like 2-3 o'clock in the morning. Like, you thought that you were going to stop it, but this is like a process that it was going to happen anyway. So it's like, you did all this for what reason? Because you still didn't get.
I'll say this: I think it's worse than white entitlement, because I think that this is, again, these people have been gaslit for the better part of the last decade, that their country's been taken from them, that the government doesn't represent them at all, that the government. Mexicans and blacks are stealing their jobs, taking over the culture, replacing them. You know, it wasn't that long ago that there were people chanting in a
"You will not replace us."
Would not replace us. Like, this is just kind of a continuation of that, where they've just been lied to over and over again. And then you look at folks like Cruz and Hawley, and other like establishment Republicans, just kind of letting these charges just fester on for he needs to get someone needs to just knock. I don't want to threaten violence to him, but he just needs to get some just knocked out.
I don't know if you remember. Sidebar. I don't know if you remember. Lindsey Graham said, if you shoot Ted Cruz on the floor of the Senate, you will walk away a free man, because that's how much people hate him.
They've hated. He's such a pariah for this in the Senate.
I knew you have to hate somebody when his name is Raphael, but yet he nicknamed himself Ted.
And he's Canadian. Yeah. And he's Canadian too. I just want everyone to know he's also Canadian.
It's like, this man said that your wife was not just ugly, but coyote ugly. And you're just like,
you're caping for him.
Like, you're just whatever. Like, so, I mean, I can't speak, but it's like, if I was Ted Cruz's wife, I would feel some type of way. Like, this man called me ugly, and you're like trying to, like, I'm sorry to be vulgar, but like, I think he wants to get in the bed with Donald Trump. He bitch made. That's the only logical, you know, whatever, because it's like Ted Cruz has become such a virus, such a cancer to you know, to like this country. And I think he's been able to kind of like get by, because like a lot of people don't pay that much. Like, everybody's so focused on Trump and what Trump is doing, they don't realize the people that are in the behind the scenes that are really doing the work to, you know, to really be like on, you know, Trump's, excuse my language, is, you know, on his pee-pee. But it's like, it's disgusting, because Ted Cruz has been such a, like, he's been doing this. And I mean, AOC called him out the other day, and he has to, like, somebody has to go. He has to go.
So I don't know if you guys felt the same way I did. So again, I'm an Army brat. 9/11 had like a huge impact on my life, right? The national security threat that I saw when these people
that we're ignoring.
Now, we've all been through like a Black Lives Matter protest. We all saw the police presence. Scary shit, right? Like, they're armed to a T. They have like their SWAT gear on and everything, and they know. Like, it's not like we're calling the chief of police and saying, "Hey, we're showing up in City Hall at this time and date." These guys are like on Facebook or on
in their turtle suit,
and they know when Black Lives Matter is going to be there, and they have everything blocked off, ready to go, right?
I just want to say, if you didn't think that there were two Americas before what happened on Capitol Hill, like, pay close attention, because this just showed me that I was like always right about this, because you know, there's definitely a double standard when it comes to how Black protesters are treated versus how these I'm gonna go ahead and call them terrorists, because that's exactly what they are. They're not even protesters, they're terrorists. And I think a lot of, like you're saying, the national security is going over a lot of people's heads because they're not realizing, to storm into the Capitol building and then, steal a laptop or have access to
and drop bombs too, like pipe bombs.
This is bigger, this is deeper than, just a whole bunch of people who are upset about the results of the election. This is far beyond the election.
Right.
This is dangerous. This is dangerous. And that, confidential information that is not supposed to be, accessed by everyday people, regular people, has been, compromised.
Yep. And I just want to emphasize this, right? That Capitol Police was woefully unprepared. They turned down federal police help. They were very slow and asking for DC Metro help. And the National Guard, I mean, that was on Trump. Trump made it really difficult for National Guard to arm up, have the SWAT gear, and be ready to go.
And
this was bad.
One of my friends said something that was mad funny. He had to give them time to go change out their protest uniform.
Absolutely.
A lot of people that were there that was like,
it's like the Spider-Man meme where they're all pointing at each other. That's exactly what it was. Like they're, like, okay, I'm in my role as an officer. I have to, pretend like I have to do something, but really these are my people. Like I'm gonna,
Haven't there been reports that they're like, you're about to say, Kev?
Yes, no, Marcus said, because I was gonna say exactly what you're gonna say.
No, there have been reports that, there are like off-duty cops and off-duty like law enforcement officers who were part of the protest and were able to kind of get in or like show their badges, and that's one of the theories as to why they were able to get through so easily.
Right.
And on another note, I can't help but to think, like, beyond that, like, even if we're talking about the woman who was like shot, and I'm sorry, but that shit is funny. Like, if your ass stayed home in California, like you travel from California to Washington,
nothing can stop you.
And then she said, nothing can stop me. And it's like, okay, yeah, a bullet would like to have a conversation. I just want to say that as a Black woman, Breonna Taylor, an EMT, someone who was in EMT training to be a nurse, was in her home sleeping, minding her business, and she lost her life because of that. She was simply just doing what we all do every day at night. And yet we're supposed to have sympathy from a woman who breached national security, who was in the wrong place at the wrong time, who didn't want to follow orders. She was a terrorist. And yet we're supposed to feel bad for her.
Carly, there's one thing I do want to highlight here too, right? So with Breonna Taylor was killed in her home. Right. And all we heard was her boyfriend standing his ground caused her death.
Right.
And when that wasn't good enough, we went deep into Breonna Taylor's life to try to prove that she was somehow
selling. She was incorporated in a drug enterprise or whatever. Like, I'm sorry, but this, like, excuse my language, this shit actually pisses me off, because it's like, excuse me, fuck that white bitch. Like, she shouldn't have been in the cap. Like, she shouldn't have been where she was. Like, I just feel like I can't feel sympathy for people. Like, I get, protesting is your right. It's okay to be outside protesting with signs, and it's okay to be upset if you're like a diehard Trump supporter and you were super upset about this election. That's cool. But you took it a step further. And you felt the need to invade a protected. This is like, I don't think people understand what the Capitol building is. Like, this is not.
There could have been Russian foreign nationals.
And not even that. It was a Black woman a few years ago who made a U-turn.
Yeah, Capitol Hill Police shot her.
And shot her with her daughter in the back seat. She simply made a U-turn. She went the wrong direction. And so it's like, it's definitely a double standard, and
let me ask you guys this about the media presence. Now, the way the media covered this, right? So you brought up like that lady that she made a video, "You Can't Stop Me," And as
the bullet took it personal.
The Jordan meme. I shouldn't be laughing, but the media highlighted the fact that she's a 14-year Air Force veteran.
Not that. So,
Don't matter.
I mean?
I don't
so
care
you should
about
have
your
known
record.
better. So you should have known better.
Hold
You
on.
should have known better.
That's normal for them though. They
That's
always
normal.
try to give white people the benefit of the doubt.
Let me ask the podcast a question. If we're not a New York podcast, but we all have deep ties to New York, right? If during the Black Lives Matter protest, what do you think would happen if an NYPD officer got his head smashed in and died?
National Guard, martial law.
I've seen the NYPD drive their vehicle to a crowd before. Okay,
right.
Nothing.
The NYPD. I've seen the NYPD just walking down in Brooklyn and just start pushing people out the way for no reason. People just walking on the street and just start.
Bro, a Capitol Hill police officer got his head hit with a fire extinguisher and died during this.
Continued clobbered him.
You know what I mean? And like they're holding like Blue Lives Matter flags and shit. And I'm just like, if this is not a clear claim that this is like a double standard, not only in the media presence, but in policing and everything else, like I don't know what is, you know.
I feel like the office
stuff, man.
I think you're right.
I feel like the officer was doing his job, you know. I think he executed his job properly. She was given a lot of warnings. She still decided to approach. He felt his life was in danger. He responded accurately and quickly to protect his life and members of Congress. So, hey, man, should have just stayed home. That's what they told us.
My thing is, you had no business. I'm gonna say it again. You had no business there in the first place. You should have stayed your ass home in California. I'm not even gonna say rest in peace because who cares how she rests? If she rests in peace or not in peace, that's her business. But you know, you should have stayed home. I mean, this is again, we are in a pandemic. So you should have been in the house anyway. Isn't California on a lockdown anyway? So it's like it's just so many reasons why you shouldn't have been there. You're a veteran. So if anybody understands national security or you know, just the importance of protecting this country and just not being a terrorist, so many like threats to this country from other terrorists from across the waters or whatever the case, to be a 14-year veteran and to be the person that you are protecting this country from is kind of like ironic, but also at the same time, like I can't have no sympathy, especially because we never get justice for the people who, even when we comply and we do everything right, sometimes we don't leave situations, you know, whole. Like even when we do everything right, we don't get to go home. Like our families have to, you know, there's dozens of people. I can go down a list of people who did everything that they were supposed to do, were just simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. And even when they were, you know, in the wrong place and their life was in danger, they did the best that they could to get home and still didn't make it home. And then when they go to, you know, when their killers go to trial or indicted, nothing happens. There's no justice for them. We protest for this, but yet it's okay for them to storm into the Capitol building and just bombard police and just not follow orders, steal government property. And we're supposed to be like, oh, well, they were being patriotic. They were defending their country.
Can I ask the podcast another question here? Mm-hmm. This is a safe place. Was Capitol Police in on this?
Absolutely.
Yes, of course. They were opening the door. They said nobody.
I don't think so
on the side and said nobody's allowed in here, you know.
Okay, so we got 3 no's. We got 3 yeses and 1 no. So Marcus, why do you think the Capitol Police was not involved in this? Because I think the chief of police should be.
Marcus, you planned it, didn't you?
I had nothing to do with it. I wasn't there. I was not in DC. I did go to Maryland, but I was not there. But no, what I'll say is
check your travel history, man.
There's no need to violate my rights, but no, I think that this was just gross incompetence, and I think that there was some confusion at the highest levels of what to do when you're corresponding with the president. What is the president saying? Or what is the White House telling you about this gathering? If you think it's just a protest, then you're probably just going to take them for their word for it, and then just put out, you know, that little amount of people. Even though there are a number of warning signs out there. I think they just missed them somehow, some way. I don't think it was like a willful thing. I don't think they were in on it. I just think that they were just stupid, because you can go back months, going back to November, in the weeks after the election, when there were messages going on around on Facebook, on Parler, on Gab, on all these other social media sites, saying that January 6th was a big deal. I think they just missed.
Tweeted about it.
So Marcus, here's the reason why I disagree with you now. Because if this was like any normal day where a Congress was not in session, it was just an empty building and they just decided to storm it, I would 100% agree with you that they overlooked it. They weren't prepared. They let them in because no one's inside the building. But when you have this was a joint session of Congress. When you have the vice president and the future vice president, Kamala Harris, are both in there, and you have the Speaker of House as well.
They had like 4 people from the line of succession.
Dude, I'm sorry. There. Even if there was no protest, though, like you gotta have your cops got to be armed to the teeth because you have 3 people who are extraordinarily important to the functioning government there.
Yeah, I get that, but that's why I say I think the fact that it was a presidential rally, I think that they're kind of taking their cues from the White House, and if the White House is telling them you have nothing to worry about, this is just a rally, I think that's what informed their decision to respond to it. Again, I don't think it's okay. I think it's stupid. That's why I think it's a matter of gross incompetence. I think they just missed it, but I don't think it was like, oh, let's just not put anybody out there. And I also think too, and Carly already said this, but racism also plays a part in it too. You're not going to be fearful of white folks, because I think in the history of the Capitol Police, they don't ever get too armed up for white people. There was a story going around that there was a Louis Farrakhan rally, not even a rally. Him and 3 other gentlemen were at the Capitol, and they had SWAT teams in the garage ready to go. They just treat white protesters differently than black people. Now, is that a matter? But I don't think that's a matter of them, being in on it. I think that's a standard protocol.
I need that quote. I need that quote, Marcus.
With the Farrakhan. Yeah.
I'll give Marcus the benefit of the doubt, and I'll go with him on what he's saying. But I still feel like even if they weren't in on it, the way that they acted on it is definitely, it gives me not sense that they had anything to do with it per se, but it's just like if it was anybody else, you wouldn't have hesitated to start shooting or been a little bit more aggressive or even been a little bit more, forceful in your role as the Capitol Police, like in your job to protect that building because that's your job. But so that is where my issue stands. Let's take them having anything to do with that out of it. Let's say this is just a regular day you went to work and some shit just pops off. If it was a mob of black people, black and brown people, everybody would have been dead. It would have just been shots through the crowd, just, whatever.
Made it to the steps.
No. So that's
when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Right?
So that's where my issue lies because, even if they weren't in cahoots, let's say they weren't in cahoots. You clearly saw the color of the people in the crowd and chose to let them just keep going, get up to the steps, get into the building, up the steps of the building, into the office, open the gates.
They were in there for 4 hours.
These people, the people that have, and I'm sorry to say this, I don't care, but the people that were on duty that day who chose not to, use their force that they, are supposed to use, have to be held responsible. That was a gross, that was negligence on your part. You played a role and you let it go as far as it went. And therefore, I feel like you have to be held responsible.
Some of them weren't even armed. That's the crazy thing about all of this. Some of the Capitol Police, they chose not to arm them.
So I'll say this, and we can move off this point because we're a little bit over. But Nancy Pelosi wasn't debriefed when this was all going on. She's the Speaker of the House, and Nancy Pelosi wasn't debriefed by the Chief of Capitol Police. That to me tells me that this was an inside job. I'm sorry. Normally I would give the benefit of the doubt, right? But again, when you have the vice president, the future vice president, the Speaker of the House, the Senate Majority Leader, future Majority Leader, security has to be tight around that perimeter.
I think you're giving them. I hear what you're saying. I think you're giving them way too much credit. This is the Trump administration, after all, guys. They're not that smart.
Yes.
No. Capitol Police doesn't answer to the federal government.
But they're gonna. But again, this is if they're gonna guard this as part of defending against the Trump rally, essentially. You don't think there's going to be any sort of connection to the president?
No,
or Marcus, his people?
Marcus, no. I'm forget the rally. I'm saying that when you have that many important people to our government in session in a building, security should have been a lot tighter.
Considering
that's all I'm saying. And they turned down federal help. That's suspicious to me. You know what I mean? Even though there's no rally, there should have been federal police officers surrounding the area. They should have had DC Metro on standby. National Guard should have been on stand. Well, forget National Guard because that's Trump, right? But DC Metro should have been on standby. You know what I mean? They should have asked for federal assistance. They didn't. They turned that down.
It makes no sense that
others. Too many dominoes fell perfectly.
It makes no sense that other states had to send in help. Because I just felt like there should have been, like, I just think when, like, considering the day that it was, they should have been a lot more prepared considering the climate of the country and how so many people were like in such an uproar about this election anyway. Because whenever, like I said, whenever it's a Black Lives Matter protest, they are in numbers. Like they are ready to be out there just to make sure that nothing goes the way that they don't want it to go. And I'm not saying, like I said, I'll even sit here and remove the idea that they had something to do with it. But I do think they didn't do anything to stop it from getting worse than what it was. You know, like at the minute that it proved to be a problem, at the minute that the security of the country was at stake, more should have been done and nothing was done. So it's like somebody was in on it. Well, you know, like
we're also glossing over the fact that there were off-duty cops and off-duty military personnel in this. And we're also kind of glossing over the fact that the FBI did an investigation and found that far-right extremists are in our police force. We already knew that as people of color, Black people.
And they also said that the biggest threat to our democracy is within our country from domestic terrorism.
Domestic terrorism.
All the agencies agreed on that.
And let me just tell you this. We had a bombing in a major U.S. city on Christmas Day. What happened to the terror alert levels? You know what I mean? It's like, this is, as a kid from 9/11, like just the national security breakdown is just appalling, you know? And like, we have TV shows about this. We have 24, we have Designated Survivor. This is just appalling that this level of breakdown like happened. This has to be an inside job. I'm sorry. And I hope that like,
I think,
you know, an
investigation. I think before we move on, I think before we move on, I just want to point out that we're glossing over one senator who I think gets 25% of the blame, like 25% to Trump, 25% to Ted Cruz, and like 25% for the lackluster job the other Republicans were doing on the Capitol and police. But I think 25% of this is on Josh Hawley because he's been running for president since he was born, and he raised the fist to the protesters basically when he was going in, like, yeah, you know, it's time, like.
It's no secret. Like, it's no secret that, you know, like people in government or people in like the police force have doubled as KKK members or like extremist members. Like that's just like common knowledge at this point. If you choose not to acknowledge that or you choose not to recognize that, that's just you're choosing to be ignorant. So I really can't put nothing past people high up who will do anything to make sure that the things that they want get done. There are a lot of people who wanted Trump to stay the president. There are a lot of people who vocally were against the results of this election, who publicly were like, if, you know, it comes down to it, I will challenge this election because I think it's wrong. And I think we have to start paying a lot more attention to those people because it's beyond Trump. This has nothing, like in my eyes, this has nothing to do with Trump. Take Trump out of it. This is this idea that you can go to any lengths that you have to go to get what you want. And that is the dangerous part about this, because elections are supposed to be a constitutional thing. Like, people are supposed to vote for the election. The Electoral College applies a certain amount of votes to each state. And then, you know, you vote on it, you certify it, you move on, and then they go on January 20th. The fact that this has been the most, I don't know, like from my lifetime, like what I've seen, I have never seen anything like this.
This was a worse national security failure than 9/11, period.
I can't believe I'm gonna say this, but one of the speeches that really resounded with me, was when his Lindsey Graham speech on the floor of the Senate.
Wait, can I ask a question? Was he drunk when he made that speech?
I thought he might have been a little soft. He had a lot of energy.
He was a little scared.
That was as lively as I've seen Lindsey Graham, and probably since he ran for president.
Honestly, I looked at Lindsey, I'm like, wait, why am I agreeing with
And-
everything Lindsey Graham is saying?
And this-
I
Lindsey
had to
Graham,
ask
yeah.
myself, am I on an edible? It's like 1 a.m. in the night,
Facts.
and I'm agreeing
and
with
these
Lindsey
are
Graham.
and a lot of the people that were a part of what happened, the other day, are the same people who fight so hard for their Second Amendment, like their right to bear arms, who are such, rifle enthusiasts, like semi-automatic, automatics, like assault rifle enthusiasts. So it's like, I can't help but to think how dangerous this thing could have gotten, had they come with like these things. This could have been a very,
But Carly,
this could have,
I agree.
this could have went, I think this is,
And to back Carly's point up, there were militiamen there. Like, feel me?
Yes.
this is bigger.
So-
This is
They caught
bigger.
what? Two pipe bombs? There were
They
two pipe bombs discovered.
hung a noose in front of the Capitol building,
And
and
had
they were
the
going to
Ziploc-
kill the vice
This is-
president.
This is, and for me watching it, I remember watching it on CNN, MSNBC, like as it was going on. And I couldn't help but to shake my head, in large part because I wasn't surprised. And that's sad, but I was not surprised at all, because I knew that Trump supporters were just not going to let this day go, considering the day that we're talking about and the magnitude of what was going on. I knew that they weren't just going to let it go. They weren't going to go down without a fight. I'm actually very disgusted, because it's like, I think a lot of people are not realizing how, and how catastrophic this could have been. Like, if more things were in place, like if they came with bombs, if they came with rifles, if they came with more than what they came. Yeah, but if they use them,
Right.
and, if they chose to just, go the extreme and use them, because considering everything that has happened in this country, like, schools, churches, music festivals.
Right.
I'm not, I'm just surprised that it didn't go as bad. I'm happy it didn't get as, gory as it could have gotten, or as dangerous as it couldn't have gotten. But this is a bigger conversation about the sense of entitlement, the sense that I'm white, so I can just do whatever I want to do. It's, it's my duty as a white person in this country to make sure that my interest is represented and I get what I want, because you feel like the person you wanted to be the president didn't win the election. That's just
I'm actually very scared about what's going to happen on January 20th.
Same.
Like, very scared.
You thought Obama, because I remember being in sixth grade, watching Obama's inauguration on TV, and that's sad. Yeah, that's sad that I'm watching TV as someone
seventh grade.
who's in sixth grade watching it and saying, like, I really hope no one does anything to him. Like, I really hope his family's okay. I really hope that they're safe and they get to, just be okay.
One thing that actually didn't quite make sense to me was, so after all this, everyone went back to work right afterwards. Like, went back to like their respective houses, like the House of Representatives, the House of Senate, and just went back to work. And I'm like, well, we don't know if there are still bombs in the building. We don't know if there's any chemical weapons in the building. Like, this is a major national security failure. You don't have to do this.
What's funny to me? What's funny to me now? A lot of them have been placed on like the no-fly list, so they can't even get back home. And I was watching a video a little bit earlier before we started recording. A guy was like in the airport screaming, like, they're calling me a terrorist. Like, you are a terrorist. You're a terrorist.
Oh my gosh.
And what's funny? It's like when 9/11 happened, it was always, like the Middle Eastern people or Muslims that were like the target of like whatever. And these are the same people who were like, oh, when Trump imposed the travel ban on like these Middle Eastern countries and everything, They were like, yeah, like we got to protect our country from these people. Like, no, we got to protect our country from you. Like, you are now who you needed to protect the country from. And it's just funny because you're like, now you're stuck. Like, you have no way to get back home.
Somebody said you're gonna cry in the car because he has no other way to get home.
I can't imagine, like, and it's funny, like, dying over Trump is one thing, but like going out of your way to travel to protest or whatever, it's just like crazy to me. Like, it's like just chuck it up as a loss. And
I'm convinced they see Trump as the second coming of Jesus at this point.
Yes. That's what a cult. That's what a cult is. That's what a cult is. A cult following is just blindly being loyal and just following somebody with no reason, no logic, no nothing. It's just like, I pick you.
I've spent my whole day arguing with those same people, you know. So like I spent the whole day arguing with people about why Twitter banned Trump, and it's so hilarious to me that these people are like so-called free market people. They don't know the difference between a private company and a public
company. Hilson,
because they think that the Twitter is publicly traded, they think it's a publicly owned company, but it's technically not. And I spent my whole day in Breitbart comments arguing with these idiots.
I'm starting to realize that a lot of people were asleep during civic class, or just didn't take the class. Or just chose like not to pay attention, because it's also funny, like Carrie Hilson was a big one, and now I see why the Beehive bullied her. And
what was she talking about?
Because she's like, take Trump out of it. She's like, take Trump out of it. This is like about censorship. Like
people get banned from Twitter all the time.
You stupid bitch. Like, you're so dumb.
Trump has a press room just for the press.
He could have a press conference.
That's what I've been saying all day.
But no, they don't understand that. They think that the only way that the president of the United States can communicate with the country is for him to get online, when really he can literally go downstairs and reporters will show up to a room and just ask him questions and he can just tell them whatever. Like, it's just, I'm sorry, but I can no longer stomach adults, because that's what we are. We're adults. I can no longer stomach adults who choose not to Google or educate themselves on simple basic principles of the government, because but would rather get online and embarrass themselves and then want to pretend like, I don't understand where this slander is coming from. Why are everybody so like, because you're stupid, like you're dumb, like that's why. So she deserves it, and I hope the Beehive gets her ass like they did a few years ago.
I agree.
I will be one of them. I'm in the Beehive and I will be attacking her all night.
All right, guys. So producer Yao is like blowing up the chat line, telling us to wrap up. So let's talk about our favorite memes, because as Americans, as Black Americans, we love to laugh at things like very serious situations. We just make fun of it. So did you guys find any good memes?
My favorite was the one I mentioned earlier, where she, like the girl who got killed, was like, nothing will stop me. And then underneath it was like a clip from Michael Jordan's The Last Dance with a bullet on his head. And he said, I took that personally. I thought that was gold. That was my favorite.
Yeah, that had me weak. I was like, I shouldn't laugh at this, but it's funny. It's funny. It's just funny.
My favorite meme is, I don't know if you ever see the video of the security guard just running his hands down.
Yeah, the British guy. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
that's how Capitol Security was.
I don't know.
And my other favorite meme was, it was ordered to break into blah blah blah. It's ordered to get into the Capitol.
No. Another favorite of mine was like a Cheeto. Like in the
the door thing.
It was a Cheeto, like the Capitol Security on whatever day it was. What was it? The 6th? All this happened. Like it was a Cheeto on like the door, and it was like Capitol Security on January 6th. That was funny.
So I don't know.
There's another one before we go. There was a tweet that said that because so much country banned America from flying overseas, America had to do a coup in America because they couldn't coup on any other country next year.
That's messed up. Yeah, right. I don't know.
Facts though.
I don't know if your family hit you up or my family in Barbados hit me up. Like, yo, are you guys good?
Like, somebody said that. Somebody uncle from Nigeria had messaged them and they posted it on Twitter. It was like, yo, America is Nigeria with a Gucci belt.
So my favorite meme, I don't know if you guys watch Animaniacs growing up, or like they remade Animaniacs. It's on Hulu now. Like, it's actually really good. So they did like the intro to Animaniacs, and like this white woman who was like saying, "Oh, they maced me," And they put
With
that
the
into
onion?
yeah.
With the onion, she was rubbing the onions in her face. Oh my god, white people really stick in your head sometimes.
This is a separate issue, but did you see the video of the girl like who was like in that black girl's face, and so she punched her?
Yeah.
I saw
She's
that.
like, oh my gosh, she attacked me.
Oh wait, we can't end the podcast without talking about the white guy yelling at the cloud in DC. That shit was hilarious. When he said crackers with a hard R, I was dying. Oh my god, that had me so weak because like everything he said was facts, but the way he was saying it was just hilarious. All right. So that's all I have for this podcast.
This is great.
This was a good podcast for our break though. So I'm pretty happy about that. All right,
kings and queens.
So guys, please make sure to follow us on YouTube and Spotify. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please make sure you reach out to your friends, your family, or whoever, because we're trying to grow this thing. We're trying to be a Black voice in politics. So please help us grow and just like us and share us to other people. That's all I have for today, guys, and we're out.
All right, later.